I don't know why I'm typing that. I could just say it. Hey everybody, welcome to this impromptu event. So far nobody showed up because I just showed up without any kind of announcement. So maybe I'll just see if anybody joins for a second. And yeah, if somebody joins, say hello in the chat. Today we're going to be building something like this. So we're going to be doing an animation, a loading spinner today that looks like this. And this is going to be an asynchronous type of thing where we're going to have an animated spinner that keeps repeating until we send it either a success message or a failure message. So if I send it a success, the animation is going to morph into this kind of success check mark. And otherwise, it's going to keep spinning. And if I send it a failure message, we're going to animate a failure like that. So I'm going to show you how we do the animation using a plugin called Lottie. Very nice plugin for NativeScript. And I'm going to show you how to do these different states, how to determine the states. Hey, look at that. Some folks are showing up. That's great. Say hello. Hey, Fatima says hey. Wilbert says hello. Ramazan, welcome back. Nice to see you again. All right, so just to recap, we're doing this animation today in this impromptu event using Lottie. And at the end of this, I'm going to show you how to do something that's a little bit of a pain to do, and that's to change the color of a Lottie file. So I don't know if anybody here uses Lottie or not for your animations. If you don't, it's a really, really nice way to do animations in NativeScript. It's actually developed by Airbnb for their applications. Got my coffee right here. And it works on iOS and Android the same way. It looks exactly the same on iOS and Android, which is one of the nice things about this. And you can design professional looking animations. You can design them yourself, or you can go to this site called Lottie Files, and there's lots of different sources. All it is basically getting a JSON formatted string, a JSON file that describes your animation. I'm looking at the stream right now, and these animations are really, really smooth. They don't look that smooth on the stream, but they're really, really nice and smooth, believe me. So we're going to be using this one over here. I just searched for a loading animation here, but if you go to Lottie Files and you take a look at all the different types of animations they have here, I mean, they have a ton of different things, and these are all animations that will run in your NativeScript application. And it's pretty lightweight. The Lottie plugin is very lightweight. The libraries that run underneath of it are very lightweight. So it's not limited to loading animations. You can pretty much do any kind of animations, and you can layer these, because really what it comes down to is just a NativeScript view that's going to be displaying this stuff for you. Let's see, Alexandru, welcome back. Nice to see Lottie tutorial. Nice idea, very useful. I'm using it mostly. All right, yeah, it's very handy for that. Font icon SVG. Is it possible? Well, I tell you what, one of the things I'm displaying right here in this demo is actually an SVG file. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So let's take a look at the code, and we're going to actually start from scratch. And I'm going to show you this stuff from scratch so that you can see how we build this up. I've created this brand new project here. Let me just move this over so we have some space to work with. Okay, so there's my simulator on the side there. And this right here is a brand new project. So right now I got the finished project off to the side here, but I'm going to show you how I built the whole thing. So let's go over here to, I'm going to just run this project right here that's not finished, so we have something to start with, and I'm going to show you how to get going with this. Now, for those that already use Lottie, you might be familiar with this process, but I am also using NativeScript 7 with the latest RC of Lottie, which is going to be a little bit, give you slightly different capabilities. So I'm going to switch over to my demo Lottie project. And I'm going to issue the command tns run. By the way, just so you can see what I'm doing here. tns run iOS, no HMR. That's good. So that's going to be running this project that I have right here. Let's wait for that to kick up. Now, while that's starting up, I'm going to show you the package.json here. You'll see that we have NativeScript 7 running, and I'm on NativeScript CLI 7 as well. I don't have Lottie installed yet here, but I'm going to grab that in a second. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at that, at what we need here. So we're going to grab Lottie, but if you go to npm, you'll see that Lottie is still at version 4. Let me show you that. Oh, my computer is really struggling right now. NativeScript Lottie, there it is. The published version is version 4. However, if you click over here on versions, you will see that there is a tagged version 5, and that's what we're going to be using. You can also use at RC, or you can use at 5.0.0. All right, so that's what I'm going to actually install here. All right, so here's our blank application. If you watch this channel, you know that I typically start out at that point. Let's go ahead and install NativeScript-Lottie. And we're going to grab the version. So if I just use npm like this, you'll see that Visual Studio Code only suggests version 4, but we want the RC version. Or you can just specify 5.0.0 like that. That's one way of installing it. Another way of installing it, here, let me just terminate this process here, is on the terminal, you can say tns plugin add NativeScript-Lottie at, don't forget this one, 5.0.0. All right, that's going to grab that tagged version. And the reason I'm using 5.0.0 is because that's the current version that actually works well with NativeScript 7, and it has some kinks worked out that were present in the previous version, including some of the functionality that I'm going to demonstrate today. All right, so there's NativeScript Lottie. We got it in there, good to go. Let's close package.json. We don't need that anymore. Here's the main page. This is where I'm going to drop my Lottie component. Now, I also need the animation, right? So the one I showed you, here's Lottie files. Let's go ahead and grab that again. I'm going to search for loading. This is the one I like right here because it has not only that loading spinner, but it also has the different states, and we want to transition between these states. It has the successful state and it has this failed state. So this is the one we want. You can click on this button right here, download JSON, and you want the Lottie JSON file. You can also get the animated GIF if you like that, or the MP4, but you won't be able to do much with that. So we want that JSON file. I'm going to download that. And I already actually have a copy of that here, so I'm going to place it in my project. Now, where you place it also matters. So we're going to place it as a resource in both iOS and Android folders. So in iOS, so under App Resources, you want to create a folder in iOS. You want to create the animation folder. I mean, you don't have to create the animation folder. You can call it whatever you like. But that's what I typically do for these Lottie animations. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this file in there. It's called Spinner. If you take a look at this JSON, it's pretty crazy. You probably don't want to be messing with this file or altering anything in here. Now you think, oh, if I just want to change the color of something, I can just go into the JSON file and find the color declaration and change it. No, don't do that. I mean, you can, but it's torture. I'm going to show you an easier way to do that a little bit later here. All right, so we got the spinner in there. Now let's get the Android version in here. Now the Android version is going to go in source, main, and let's make sure I get this right. You want to create an assets folder inside main. Assets, and inside assets, that's where you're going to create your animations folder. And I'm just going to copy that same file in there, spinner.json. Let's copy that. Paste that in. Okay. So now we have the same folder structure for iOS and Android. They're both going to be referencing that same spinner file. Now the way we use that is different in Angular, it's different in Vue, and it's going to be different in Core. Right now I have a Core project here, so I need to register the namespace for that plugin up here in order to use it in the Vue. But if you're using one of the other frameworks, all right, let's get to that. I had it open somewhere. Let's take a look here. There's NativeScript Lottie. This actually gives you the instructions in the README. Let's reload this, make sure I'm getting the right page. Unable to find README, that's not true. Come on, NPM. You're lying. All right, I'm gonna go over to the GitHub repo because this one has a README. Okay, so this README tells you how to install it. We already went through this. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna add an XML namespace and the Lottie view. And this is how you do it in Angular. You have to register the element, and that'll take care of it for you. And then you can just drop the element like this in your NativeScript Angular HTML files. And with Vue, you do a similar thing. You register the element, and then you drop that in your template, like so. So pretty straightforward for those two. Not as straightforward for NativeScript Core, so that's why we're going to do it this way. I'm going to copy. You know what? I'll just copy this whole page. Why not? Let's plop that in here. Paste. Okay, so we have the XML namespace Lottie pointing to that NativeScript Lottie plugin. We don't need the class on the page. We don't care about that. Here is the Lottie view, and right over here, the source. So this is where we need to specify that file that I've added in the animation folder. So because we put it in the resources, we have to use res:// and then animations, which is the folder I put it into, and then spinner.json. Okay. I'm also going to specify the height. Let's make it 150. I'm going to turn off loop, and I'm going to turn off autoplay. And the reason for that is I want to have manual control over when I play that animation and when I stop it. And we're also going to play different segments at different times. So that's why I'm turning that automation off for now. All right, now the loaded event is something I am going to keep. Let's call it Lottie loaded. I'm going to keep this event because I want to hook it up in the code behind. So here's my main page code behind. I'm going to export a function called Lottie loaded. And as usual, it's a NativeScript VIEW. It's a view. It inherits from the view class in NativeScript. So this also will have the event data coming in, and args.object is our view. So we can cast it as a view. Look at that. The imports work so well now with the new NativeScript version. Const. Well, actually, I'm going to grab this and save it outside of the scope of that function because we're going to need to use it. So I'm going to say let Lottie, and that's going to be, you can cast it as a view, but more specifically, it's a Lottie view. So I'm going to cast it as that. I'm going to save that as Lottie view, undefined for now. And here, Lottie is going to equal to args.object as Lottie view. Let's import Lottie view. That's coming from NativeScript Lottie. Okay, there it is. So we got an instance of the Lottie view in the back end, in the code behind. That's good. Now the next thing we want to do is this Lottie view instance will allow us to do a few things. So you can check out the Lottie documentation. The APIs are documented. Now the plugin for NativeScript exposes a few of those APIs. Not all of them, but a few of them. So you can get to play animation, which will just play it from beginning to end. Then there's play animation from progress to progress. This is the one we're going to use because we want to play a piece of that animation. And we're going to figure out which piece in a minute. Progress is supposed to report to you where you are in the animation, but right now there's a bug with it and it doesn't work, but I'll show you a workaround for that. Let's see. Speed. You can set the speed of the animation. We're going to keep it the speed that it is. Okay, so that's good enough for now. There is one more thing. The completion handler. Completion block. When the animation stops, this will fire. So this is a function that'll fire after the animation is done, and it'll actually pass you a flag that says whether it's done or not. It's a Boolean flag. If it's sometimes it might stop and it might not be done yet if it keeps playing. So if you stop it and then play it immediately, it'll trigger the completion block, but this done will be set to false. So we want to check to make sure that it really is done before we do anything else that we want to do after the animation finishes completely. So we're going to have a couple of flags here. One is conclude. This is going to be set to false initially, but we're going to set it to true after we hit this button. We want to hit a button to conclude the animation. We want to say, okay, now you can go ahead and finish it. And we're also going to have a flag that says success to differentiate between a successful completion and a failure. So when you're loading something from the back end, from an HTTP call, for example, you want to let the user know if it failed or succeeded. And we're going to play different parts of the animation based on that. So for now, false, success is going to be false, and we're going to determine if it should be true or not later. Now, when this is done, I'm just going to set an alert here. And I'm going to say, if it's successful, say success. Otherwise, we're going to say failure. And since we already concluded, we already executed this block, we're going to reset conclude back to false. Okay? So this is the completion block. Nothing too exciting, nothing too interesting. Now, let's make sure that this even plays. So when Lottie loads, I'm going to say Lottie dot play animation. I'm gonna save everything and let's take a look at that. So I'm gonna need to run this again. And while that's happening, let's take a look at what's going on here. Marco. Hi Marco, great content. Thanks Marco, appreciate that. Anna says, why are we using version 5? And Neelansh says, hello. So version 5, Anna, is because version 5 is the most recent version that's compatible, and it's got a few bug fixes. It's compatible with NativeScript version 7, which just came out on Monday. So by the time folks watch this, I'll leave this on YouTube on my channel. By the time some of you watch this, we might already be version 6 or version 7, and it might be up to date on NPM. It's just that for this stream, I'm showing the latest, greatest bits. All right. Sure, no problem, Anna. Okay, so let's see. This thing is still building. So what I want to do is have a couple of buttons here. Let's do that while it's building. I have a stack layout. That's fine. That means that I can just create another button here with the text of go to trigger my animation. And that's going to have a tap event on go tap. All right, so we're gonna have a go button, and I also want to have a success button and a failure button. So I'm gonna copy that. Success, failure. On success tap, on failure tap. All right, so we need these 3 handlers in the code behind. Let's do that. Export function on go tap. On success tap and on failure tap. Sorry, I don't mean to confuse you by pasting this in here, but that was just temporary. Okay. Let's just make sure this is playing before I save the files. Wow, it's not playing. What's going on here? This is a Webpack thing, I bet. So let's take a look. I'm going to save it again. We have the buttons, but we don't have the Lottie animation playing. And hopefully we'll probably watch the recording. All right, Sebastian, greetings from Mexico. All right, so we got to figure out what's going on here. And I have a feeling that this has to do with Webpack. Are my spellings correct here? See, this is the thing about live streaming. You can't go back and edit this part out like I usually would in my regular videos. Animations. Haha. Okay. So I didn't make it plural. I did in Android. Okay, so you get the idea. Basically, you want to make sure that the file you're referencing is actually spelled correctly. So I'm not going to bother fixing that right now on Android, but okay, there it is. So folks, what I mentioned about Webpack, that does play a role if we didn't deploy these files as resources. If you drop these JSON files in your app folder, then you're going to need to edit webpack.config to make sure that that actually picks up the JSON files. What am I talking about? Well, Webpack is going to build this stuff and copy it based on certain glob patterns. So I have a video on that actually. If you go back to through my videos, we go over that. And right here is where you tell Webpack to copy certain files based on matching these patterns. We copy everything from assets, fonts, JPEG files, and PNGs. And you would probably also add one for JSON files. Okay? But since we have these in our app resources, then we don't need that. Okay. So let's see. You saw the animation playing. You saw it completing as well. That means that everything is working. Now let's hook up our animation to play when we tap the go button only. So I don't want to play the animation on load. I only want to play this animation when we tap the go button. So I'm going to say Lottie dot play animation, but I don't want to just play the animation. I want to play the animation from a certain spot to another spot. How do I figure out these spots? There's the signature for that. Start progress is a number and end progress is a number. Oh, well, what kind of number is it? Is it a million? Is it 1? It says right there. It says the values must be from 0 to 1. So that's pretty helpful. So 0 being the beginning of that animation file and 1 being the very end of it. So it's weighted like that. I want to play only the first part of that animation. So if we go back here to the Lottie file that I'm using, and I'm going to pause it here, I can just spin this thing around a little bit. And down here you'll see frames. So you see 35. I know it's probably pretty tiny over there. That doesn't help me. Let's exit full screen. Okay, so you see the number here is going up and then the total number of frames in that animation. So to get smooth animation, you need to use 60 frames per second, and these animations are typically at 60 frames per second. That means that there's about 14 seconds. I didn't just calculate that in my head. I did it earlier. So this is 841 frames, 16 frames per second. Total is 14 seconds, but that doesn't matter how many seconds. We want to make sure that we get that looping. So right there is that break point, right there at 119. So at 119 frames is when we can start looping that animation. And that's what I want to play. So let me move this out of the way for a second. So I want to play this from 0 to 119. Oh, sorry, that's actually not 119. So this should be between 0 and 1, right? So we got to figure out what is 119 out of 841, which is the total. So up here I'm going to add a couple of constants. One is going to be the animation loading loop frame. Now I already have this over here helping me out. 1, so I don't mess up, and 2, so that I don't have to type as much. Feeling kind of lazy today. Animation loading loop point frame is 119 here. That's one constant. I'm going to paste a couple more here. Animation success start frame is 238. Animation success end frame is 417. And total frames is 841. So what are these other frames that I need? Okay, so one of them is going to be the start of success, which is right over here. It starts about here, and then it loops around and gives me that thumbs up check mark. That means good to go. So right between here and here, between those frames, is the animation for success. And then later on, we get the animation for failure between around here and the end. Okay, so we're going to write those down as constants over here as the frame numbers, and I'm going to use those down over here in my actual animation. So I'm going to play animation from progress to progress, and it's going to go from 0 to animation. Well, what happened there? Animation loading loop point, and I think it's divided by the total frames to get that. Yeah, animation total frames. There we go. So this will give us that ratio between 1 and 0, where that animation should loop. All right. Let's try that. Oh, one more thing. Since we want the animation now to loop, when we tap go, I need to say Lottie dot loop equals true. Now we're gonna loop it. Later we're gonna stop the loop, but now we're gonna loop it. Let's check it out. I'm gonna press go. There it is, it's animating. Very cool. And it's gonna keep going, and it's gonna keep looping between those spots, which is exactly what we want. So while you're doing some work in the background, while your HTTP call is going, this is going to keep looping, which is exactly what we want. Now, when we click on success, we want that to switch over, and we want to play the success animation. However, there's a little bit of a problem. When we trigger success, how do we do that? Well, we can say, okay, conclude equals true, right? And maybe even success equals true. But how do we stop the animation and play the other part? Well, we can also say like this. We can just copy this right here and say play animation from progress to progress, and then figure out the other part that we want to play. But that's actually not going to work correctly. And the reason for that is, what if we press success, or what if we receive the success message while this animation is somewhere in the middle and not at a breaking point where it would smoothly transition into the next animation phase? That would be a problem, right? So let's create another function here. A private function, we'll call it onComplete or onConclude. All right, and we'll pass in, and we won't pass in anything. So on conclude, what we want to do is say, we're going to loop, and we're going to set that to false. And we want to play that animation out from progress to progress. And we want to actually determine whether we want to play it, we want to play the success part or the failure part. So we want to say if success. Let's create a couple of variables here. Let from, and from is going to be animation success start frame divided by animation total frames. So this is from the beginning of the start animation to the total frames. And 2 is actually going to be animation end frame divided by total frames. But if we're not successful, so if we are successful, we're going to play from and 2. Okay, so I'm going to put from here and 2 over here. Prettier will fix it once I save the file. Now, if we're not successful, we want to flip that around. So if we're not successful, we want to play the failure state of the animation. Okay, so that's this state right here with the X, and that actually starts out about over here, 705 or so, 705 frames. So let's see, from is going to be 705 divided by total. Okay, and 2 is going to be 1. That's the end of the animation altogether. So we're going to play that out if we're a failure. So this basically will handle conclusion of the animation, whether we're having a failure or a success. Okay, let's just put Lottie loop false up here. It doesn't really matter, but just to keep things a little cleaner. When do we call this conclude? Do we call it from on success tap? No, we don't. And that's because what I was saying earlier is we don't want to just send a message to conclude the animation at any point. What we want to do is wait until that circle goes all the way up to the top again to turn into that dot at the top, and then do its animation to complete the success. How do we do that? This is where we have to keep track of the progress of the animation. So let's do that. All right, when I hit tap, I'm going to set up an interval here. I want to keep track of the progress, and this is what I was talking about earlier. The Lottie plugin actually is supposed to give you progress. Let me show you this. Lottie.progress. This is supposed to give you progress, but right now it does not. Now maybe in a future version it will, but right now it does not. So there are a couple things I want to try here that I actually haven't tried before. One of them is this right here, Lottie. Now Lottie is the JavaScript object that's a wrapper around the native object. So you can get native view, and then you can access all the different native APIs that are available through Lottie, including, there's this one, which I looked up in the documentation, real-time animation progress. Something for us to try out, okay? Then there's another one, this one right here, Lottie.nativeView.currentFrame. Also might help us out quite a bit, because then we don't need to do any calculations. Hopefully this gives us just the frame. So we'll try that maybe if we have enough time. But for now, to do this manually, I can just create my own progress and keep track of it. Okay, I'm going to set progress to 0 initially. Then I'm going to create a JavaScript set interval. And this will basically create an interval that's going to run on the JavaScript thread. And you want to make sure that you terminate this interval at some point whenever the animation is done. So I'm going to save this off as an interval ID. And I'm going to create a callback for the interval to execute. And this interval is going to happen once every animation frame. Now, what's an animation frame? 60 frames per second is the desired amount, frame rate, right, that we want to strive to when we're doing animations that look compelling and realistic. And every second has 1,000 milliseconds, so we want to do 1,000 divided by 60. That's your interval. So that actually equals about 16.6 repeating. So every 16 milliseconds or so is one frame. So we're going to execute this every 16 milliseconds, and we're going to keep track of that progress. So we're going to say progress, and we're going to set it equal to. Now, if progress is less than the animation loading loop frame, which if you remember was 119, right here, that's at that point where that animation circle is at the very top. So if it's less than that, then we're going to increment the progress. Progress equals progress plus 1. Otherwise, we're going to reset the progress back to 0. So this is basically following along with that animation and keeping track of that progress of that animation for that loop. Okay, now just to show you and demonstrate what that looks like, I'm going to console log out progress here. All right. Let's make sure that everything is good to go. Now we can abstract away this right here into its own function called start animation. You know what? Why don't we just do that? Let's create a local private function called start animation. And that's just going to do that. And now we're just going to call it down here when we hit tap. Waiting for TypeScript to catch up. Save that. All right. Restarting. Who's here? Let's see. Nilansh. This is interesting. Lottie seems cool. Yeah, Lottie is pretty sweet. It's probably the easiest way to do really nice animations in NativeScript. Complex animations is what I mean, not simple animations. For simple animations, just use the NativeScript APIs for that. I'm going to click Go here, and look what happens with our console here. I don't know if you can see that on the stream or not. It might be going too fast. I don't know, but you can see that it's going up to from 0 to 119 and resetting, then going back. And that's basically what's happening here. Now, how do we stop that? We want to somehow put an end to it when we click on the success button or the failure button, right? So what we're going to do here is inside that loop, we're going to break out of the loop. So right over here, we're going to do a quick check. If progress equals 0. This is the key right here. So we're not going to break out of the loop until progress is 0. That means that the animation went around in a circle, got back to the beginning, and that's when it's okay to break out of the loop. Okay? The other condition that we need is that we have conclude is equal to true. So when progress is 0 and conclude are both true, then it's okay to break out of the loop. And we're going to say clear interval, give it the interval ID. Okay. And now we're going to just call conclude animation. Really? Thanks, TypeScript. Oh, on conclude is what I called it. It would have made more sense if I called it conclude animation. Okay. Should we try it? Let's give it a try. I'm gonna save this. Okay, the crazy part is still to come, folks. How long has this been going on? I don't see a timer. 45 minutes. So I don't want to spend too much time on doing the color stuff, but I'll show you how I got there. All right, so I'm gonna press go. It's gonna animate and it's gonna keep spinning, and then I'm gonna press success, and you'll see that it waits until it gets to the end. Then it animates out that circle and then finally gives us the success message. Okay, let's try that again. I'm gonna do the failure state now. So it's gonna keep spinning and spinning and spinning until I press failure button, and then it's going to give a signal to go into the failure state. Did I press it? Failure? What's happening? Did I not implement that function? Look at that. I did not implement that function. So I'm going to copy what's inside on success tab. Conclude should be true, but success is going to stay false. Okay? What? Wow. First time I've seen Visual Studio Code tell me that it's in the middle of saving. Okay. This computer, by the way, is from 2014. This computer is 6 years old and is still alive and kicking. So I'm glad that it's actually able to do all this stuff. It's streaming, recording, showing multiple things, running emulators. Go. Okay, there's the animation. I'm going to send the failure signal, and voila. Animation complete, we get a failure message. Awesome. So that takes care of doing the animation part. Now, how do we change the color of this thing? Well, there is a couple ways of doing this. The reason you want to change the color, maybe your company has a certain color guide that you need to stick to, right? So Alejandro gives me, oh, what is that? One of those dances? I don't even know. I'm not cool enough for the modern dance things. All right, so we have this Lottie files thing, which is a really cool site for these kinds of assets. And you can even change the different layers and colors right in here before you download the JSON. So for example, I can click on edit colors and I can go ahead and change these colors. Let's say that blue circle, I want it to be this color, right? Or let's say I wanted the success color to be green. You can click on the green, hit update, and it does that. And then you download the JSON file again. And yes, you can dynamically switch between multiple different JSON files. But what if you wanted to generate the color dynamically and you didn't want to have a million, billion, however many billion colors there are in the world? You didn't want to have all those files, all those JSON files. Well, you can do this dynamically. And it's not a very pleasant process, I have to tell you right now. So this gives you a JSON file. Right now you have a JSON file and all the information about animations and all the information about the colors is inside there. However, to change that is very difficult. Now you would need a JSON prettifier and figuring out the path. Now, how do we actually do that? The Lottie plugin allows you to do that. Let's go over here. When Lottie is loaded, let's give us a little more space here. I'm going to say Lottie, and it has a couple of functions on it that are pretty interesting. One of them is set color value delegate for key path. Sounds like it has to do with color, but what the heck is a delegate for key path? What the heck is a key path, and what does it take? It takes a value, which is a color. We know that color is actually a NativeScript type. That's easy, so we can set that. But the key path is a string array, and I don't know what to pass in there. And I figured this out. Maybe there's a better way, and maybe you know a better way how to do this. But for now, this is how I do it. So first of all, let's take care of the color, which is going to be a NativeScript color type. So we can say new color. And here we can pass in a hex value, or we can pass in a string as a color. I'm going to pass in green. All right, and we need to import color. So let's go ahead and do that. That's coming from NativeScript core. So we took care of the color part. That means we're gonna switch the color to green. But what do we pass in the second part? This is the part that's a little bit tricky. And it's an array of strings. For this, folks, I'm gonna pull out a tool called After Effects. So if you're not familiar with what Lottie is, Lottie takes After Effects animations, and After Effects is an Adobe program, and it has a learning curve. For those that know it, know it. For those that don't know it, it's going to take you a while to learn it. But it's an animation program, and that's where you create your animations. So all these assets that you see here, all these assets on this Lottie file site were initially created in After Effects and then exported into JSON format using a plugin called Body Movin'. You might be familiar with that process, but you might not be familiar with the reverse process. Reverse process means that you can use the Body Movin' plugin to open up those JSON files again. And that's what I did here. So I opened up that JSON file using After Effects using the Body Movin' plugin. So you can see here that we have extensions, and we got this one called Body Movin'. That opened up the JSON file. Oh, I see that a lot of people dropped off once I started talking about After Effects. But for those of you that stuck around, thank you for that. You might not be an After Effects user, but at least you'll know how you can get to the paths. And while this is a difficult process, there might be tools out there that do this for you. I don't know of any. We'll see. I'll show you this process. Okay, so we want to get that path, and the path is going to be this. So this is basically the animation right here, and you'll see that we have the icon loader success. This is the full animation, and it plays like this, and it consists of different parts. One of them is called the loader. So this is the loader that's first the spinny part. All right, there it is. And it's called, the path is so far ICN-loader. And then inside of that, we have this circle blue, which is a layer. So we open up that layer, then it has contents, then it has a group. It's basically like SVG. It's like SVG, but it's for animation. So if you're familiar with how SVG is structured, it's kind of like that. So you need to get that path going all the way to that property that's going to be changed. So we have ICN loader, circle blue, group 1, stroke 1. All right. So that's where the color is changed. So let's do that. Let's go over here and pass in that as a string. I'm going to head over to a new line here. And that's going to be ICN loader. And these need to be separated by periods. And that's one of the key things that I was missing when I first tried this out. ICN loader, circle dash blue dot group 1 dot stroke 1. Whew. You want to make sure you spell that correctly too. So that's a pain, as you can see, but it'll get you what you need. So this first spinner should now be green. Let's take a look. I'm going to press go, and there it is. It's green. Ta-da. So you've changed the color of that first animation. Now if I press success now, the other part of the animation, the success part, is actually blue still. So now again, you need to go back, figure out the path to the success, which is ICN success. It has circle blue, so that path is going to be the same, but it also has a tick part, which is the actual check mark. So those individual parts need to be colored separately. I'm gonna save you some time. I'm gonna paste those right in here. So here's that stroke 1 for circle blue. And this is the ICN success part now. And then the tick. Okay. Let's see. Clicking go. It's gonna spin around, send the success message. And the success message is now also green. So that's it, folks. That's all for now for Lottie. Now, if you do want to see some more Lottie related animations or how to work with it, it's really pretty simple. There is one more thing I wanted to show you, and that is a lot of you have been asking how to actually display SVG files in NativeScript. Well, there are plugins that do SVG, and I think there's some decent plugins that do that. However, Lottie has a set of tools, and one of them is actually SVG converter. So you can take an SVG file, convert it to a Lottie JSON file, use the Lottie plugin, and actually just display the SVG. Right over here, back to Lottie files, we can go to tools, convert SVG to Lottie, right there. I can drag an SVG file right over here, drop it in, it'll give me a Lottie file. You can deploy it the exact same way I showed you, and then you would just reference that SVG file. It won't be SVG, it'll still be a JSON file at that point, but you'll be able to statically show an SVG file if you really need to do that. So that's all for today, folks. I really hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for watching and sticking it out even through the, I don't know, the After Effects annoying part. And if there's any questions, let me know in the chat. If not, I'll stick around for just a little bit, for a couple minutes, and I will see you all in the next video and in the next live stream. I don't see any questions coming in. Just give it a couple more minutes. Sometimes there's a big delay here between these things. Okay, folks, thanks for coming. See you all later.